So maybe people will join us. So, hello everybody from Washington, D.C. Uh, Today was, let me turn up the volume. Maybe some more people will join us here, but let's get started. Hello from Washington, D.C. Today was Indictment Day for the January 6th case brought by Jack Smith with the Department of Justice, the special. Actually, he's independent of the Department of Justice. A lot of people get that wrong. They think he's like directly answers to the Attorney General, Merrick Garland. Jack Smith is actually an independent prosecutor in this case, and he brought the indictment from the January 6th investigation, which now has been revealed to be 4 criminal counts against Donald J. Trump. So I'll just go over what the scene was like at the Capitol building today. And let's see, just give me a second here. So yeah, maybe some people join us here. I got down to the parking garage around 2 o'clock, and the news was still saying at that point, the last I had heard, that he was due to arrive at the courthouse at 4. I think he really was supposed to be in front of the magistrate judge at 4 o'clock. So I thought he might get there a little bit early, and then I started hearing right before I pulled into the garage that he had already left Bedminster and that he was already on the plane at Newark and taking off, or had taken off. So I was pretty convinced he was going to get there before 4 o'clock at that point. So I went ahead and finished parking in the parking garage and brought my sign along, a little handmade sign that said, "No one is above the law," and brought that with me. And the parking garage was about 4 blocks. Yeah, 4 blocks from the E. Barrett Prettyman Federal Courthouse in D.C., which is the D.C. Circuit Court in the federal judicial system. So I knew it would be there. In fact, the media had already been saying that, but that's the main federal courthouse in Washington, D.C. So really, I think it's the only federal courthouse. The other one's D.C. Superior Court. Yeah, and even before I drove into the garage, something really struck me, really stood out in stark contrast to my own apprehensions about going there with my sign and maybe being assaulted by some of these rabid supporters, some of the MAGA folks that I've seen when I've been going down a little bit the last couple months to take notes on some of the J6ers, January 6th people that went to the Capitol and, violently attacked police and did some damage to the Capitol building on January 6, 2021. I've covered some of their trials and followed them a little bit. I knew that these folks they have a propensity for violence, and quite a few of them are pretty unstable. So I didn't, I was kind of apprehended about going down there, but I figured that people should say no to Trump, no to his followers who are almost in sort of this fascist euphoria with their strongman Papa figure, that they put Trump up on this pedestal. So in contrast to that, before I pulled into the garage, I saw a young person on a corner about 2 blocks from the garage, really, really, really close to the Capitol, like where a lot of Congress people would be going. And they were sitting down but they were on the corner. I think it was like New Jersey and North Capitol Street. So yeah, like 3 blocks from the Capitol building, just up the hill a little bit, up North Capitol Street. And they had like a tape or a line, and hanging from the line was talk to a trans kid, the sign that said talk to a trans kid. And they were sitting there behind the sign. And I thought to myself, wow, I'm apprehended, cis white male, apprehended about possibly getting assaulted by some MAGA people. And here's a young trans kid who's putting themselves out there to possibly have conversations with right-wing congressional staffers, right-wing congresspeople, right-wing tourists that could be passing by that have a thing against trans people, a great animosity towards trans folks. And this person is like, talk to a trans kid, basically inviting them to come talk to me. And that really struck me. If we can have conversations with each other, maybe we can start to understand each other better. I mean, I'm at the point where I have a lot of trouble understanding these MAGA folks. So anyway, that stuck in my mind. Like, if a young trans person can put themselves out there on a street corner and trying to engage people in conversation, talk to a trans kid. I could talk to MAGA folks. I can hold a sign that says no one is above the law as Trump arrives to the courthouse, no problem. So I get down to the courthouse, and it's huge crowds in front, both pro-Trump and anti-Trump. And there's a long line of, the media vans, the big news station vans with the antennas, the dishes and stuff lined up in front of the courthouse. So if you're driving along Pennsylvania Avenue, or it sort of forks there, Pennsylvania Avenue and Constitution Avenue. So if you're going up Constitution Avenue or continuing on Pennsylvania Avenue, and you pass that point, you wouldn't even be able to see most of the building. Like, it was blocked out by these huge news station vans. And then on both sides, there's like a little triangle park, like where Pennsylvania Avenue and Constitution Avenue sort of split. There's a little triangle pocket park there that was mostly pro-Trump. And I think across the street was mostly anti-Trump folks. So I drove around first before I parked, but I got down there and I saw a little bit of that. But I didn't go right into that. And instead, I turned right up 3rd Street. Because yesterday, CNN said it was likely he was going to enter on the 3rd Street side. And sure enough, I'm walking up 3rd Street, and there's a lot of media people, a lot of the TV cameras on the 3rd Street side, aimed at the 3rd Street entrance, the doors there on 3rd Street into the courthouse. It's a big courthouse, and that side is actually on the 3rd Street side. That's like, part of that is like the new annex, the newer part of the building built in the 80s. And the older building, I think, was built in the 20s or 30s, much, much older. And that's a little bit inward from 3rd Street. And then I'm walking up 3rd Street because some people had also been theorizing that he would do a low profile entrance and take the back side of the building, which is on C Street. And sure enough, I go up and I'm at the T intersection, because C Street doesn't go all the way through. At the T intersection of 3rd and C Street, where the back side of the building is, the back side of the courthouse is. And sure enough, there's 5 or 6 Mack trucks lined up end to end at that sort of T intersection, 3rd and C Street. So it's blocking the cameras from taking shots down C Street. So I said, okay, that looks like maybe he really is going to try and enter from the back entrance on C Street. And I remembered there are ramps going into the basement underneath the courthouse where there are some holding cells, and only police vans transporting detainees, prisoners, can go down in there because there's lockup cells down underneath the courthouse, as well as this small parking garage where they take people down that have a court date and they're already being detained. So I walked further around, and sure enough, I saw police. There's a little plaza park area off of D and Indiana Avenue, looking back down before one of the other buildings starts. And sure enough, that grassy area had a police tape across it. Another walkway, well, that was on the sidewalk on the courthouse side of going down to the courthouse side of 3rd Street, had police tape across that too. So sure enough, they're keeping people away from C Street. So at that point, I was pretty much confirmed in my mind that he would be going through the rear entrance. So then I go around to where there's some steps going down to a plaza in between. It's sort of catty-corner. The federal courthouse, Pretty Man Federal Courthouse, is sort of diagonally or catty-corner across from DC Superior Court. So in between is like this steps going down and then a plaza. And I'm going down the steps and through the plaza, and sure enough, there's some cameras being set up on that end of C Street, where the steps in the plaza are. And they're pointing down towards that rear entrance that I remembered about, with the ramp going down underneath the courthouse from C Street. And cameras are being set up and they're angling right towards that. And there were some people starting to come up, and I was one of those people with a sign. There are not many people that had signs. There were people that just wanted to stand and watch and see what was happening, because a lot of people realize this is a historical event. And then as I was standing there, I got up right to the bike fence, sort of along the sidewalk, but not quite in the street, because when I first got there, the police said you couldn't stand in the street. But anyways, as the crowd got bigger, they allowed people to stand in the street because it was completely closed to traffic, and there were bike fences that were stopping us from going, that area behind the courthouse. So I stood there, and then soon enough, I saw a drone. I'm like, well, okay, that's, if I wasn't sure in my mind before, the drone was above C Street, catching aerial footage of when he would arrive. And then, the one of the press people with the cameras there started saying, well, he's already arrived at the airport. They're about to get on the highway. And then about 5 minutes later, they said they're on the highway. They're heading towards this way. And I started hearing other people saying that too. And then gradually more news cameras came over and set up there. And then they said he was on the highway. And then people were speculating, well, was he going to come through the 9th Street Expressway? And then he would have to come down Pennsylvania Avenue and approach the courthouse more from the front? Or would he take the 395 tunnel that comes up on 3rd Street and take that back entrance? And I thought to myself, if he really wants to keep this low profile, he'll just take the tunnel all the way up to 3rd Street and come in that back entrance. And that's what happened. About not even quite 15 minutes later, about 10 minutes later. So now it was about 3:15. Sure enough, there was a couple of police motorcycles, a police car, and then 2 black limos and 3 black SUVs turn into C Street and then quickly go down that ramp down below the courthouse. And that whole time I'm holding my sign up, and I was, I think, pretty much the only sign in that front row of people pushed right up against the bike racks. And I'm right next to the TV cameras. And my sign again said, no one is above the law. And but I'm sure he didn't see it. He just went in right away. And then I walked around the front, and it looked like a bigger crowd was in the front. A lot of people thought that maybe he'd pass that way, or they just liked having the news media with their big vans there, thinking they'd get on. I don't know. But the much bigger crowd was still in the front of the building. I think a lot of the people and a lot of the media that were on the 3rd Street side eventually did make their way over, but I don't know if they all got there in time because he was 45 minutes earlier than what a lot of people said, but they could probably tell if they're watching him take off from Newark Airport and when he landed in Reagan National Airport in Arlington. They could probably tell. So, yeah, and I just did a quick Facebook Live thing there explaining what happened. So yeah, Trump was then formally charged, went before this magistrate judge, who's not the trial judge, and was given the 4 charges. And I'll read you those 4 charges in this January 6th indictment. Count 1 count of conspiracy to defraud the United States. 2nd count, 1 count of conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding. 3rd count, 1 count of obstruction of and attempt to obstruct an official proceeding. 4th count, 1 count of conspiracy against rights. Now, a lot of people have never heard of that one before. That's rarely used, but it is a violation of the law. So let's go back to the first one. 1 count of conspiracy to defraud the United States. Now, that's pretty interesting. Now, a lot of these charges, I believe, hinge on him knowing that his claims of election fraud and, just that the election was fraudulent, that he knows that that was BS, and he knows that he lost the election. And so a lot of these charges hinge on proving that he knew that. And there's a lot of people that are going to be called to testify. So a little more detail about that. First one count of conspiracy to defraud the United States applies to Trump's repeated and widespread efforts to spread false claims about the November 2020 election while knowing they were not true. There, I just said it. And for allegedly attempting to legally discount legitimate votes, all with the goal of overturning the 2020 election, prosecutors claim in the indictment. Now, that is a major, major charge. And again, the historical significance of the day and people wanting to be there today is just buttressed by that. An actual president trying to overturn an election in the U.S., a federal election in the U.S., is the historical, significance of that cannot be understated. Count 2, 1 count of conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding. And this was brought due to the alleged organized planning by Trump and his allies, the 6 co-conspirators that have been mentioned in the media, planning by Trump and his allies to disrupt the electoral votes certification in January 2021. Now, a big part of that was the slate of alternative or fake electors that they were trying to come up with and trying to get Republicans in the battleground state legislatures to sort of get behind. And sort of these alternative slate electors that would cast their electoral college votes for Trump. Again, that's a pretty major crime. You're undercutting our system of government, basically, and how elections are decided in this country. And disregarding any power that a 1 person, 1 vote might have, though we don't really have true 1 person, 1 vote. We have representative, and we have the representative democracy, and we have electoral college. But this is to say, none of that matters. We're going to come up with our alternative slate of electors. So count number 3, 1 count of obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding. This is tied to Trump and his co-conspirators' alleged efforts after the November 2020 election until January 7, 2021 to block the official certification proceeding in Congress. So right there, this includes him pressuring Mike Pence. This pressures a lot of the bullshit that Sidney Powell, and who's one of the co-conspirators, and Rudy Giuliani, another co-conspirator, and the pressure they put on Mike Pence, with especially another co-conspirator, John Eastman, doing this whole theory that of something that does not exist, that Mike Pence, the vice president, actually has the power to send back the electors. Now, I wish, and it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting. I bet Al Gore wished that he really did have that power in January 2001, because the vice president Al Gore was the loser in that election. So if he had to preside over his own defeat at Electoral College, that was pretty strange watching that happen back in January 2001. And fourth count, one count of conspiracy against rights. Now, this is an interesting one. A lot of people are like, what does that mean, against rights? This actually refers to Trump and his co-conspirators' alleged attempts to oppress, threaten, and intimidate people in their right to vote in an election. So again, this is basically saying, so what if I won the election? I have my alternative slate of electors here. I have Kellyanne Conway. My alternative facts. Trump was told numerous times by people in his administration that he lost the election. They hired election specialists that sort of went out and investigated all the battleground states. And the people they hired to do these investigations, they issued reports at the end that said they found zero evidence of widespread election fraud. So by conspiracy against rights is to say just that the winning margin against me, like putting Biden in office, doesn't matter. Like him calling up saying, please find me 11,780 votes. Come on, that's all I need. So there we have it. So he's going to go, so the magistrate judge today, but the next time it appears is going to be August 28th, and it'll be before Judge Tanya Chutkan. And she is an Obama appointee, and I've seen her in her courtroom 3 times now. 2 times for sentencing of January 6 people. One person I thought she was a little too soft on. She gave this young person only 5 months, I think, because he was young and kind of easily impressionable. I think he's 22 now. So yeah, I mean, 3 years ago, he was 19. So she gave him only 5 months, and I think something like 36 months or 2 years. I think it was 2 years of supervised probation after his 5 months in prison. And she said to him, I really hope you can get your life back together, and be careful who you let to make such a strong impression on you. Like, basically saying, be careful who you follow. And she said something similar to the other person too. She gave a stiffer sentence to that person, I think, because they had a record. And then I saw her and the third time I saw her was a pre-trial hearing for another J6 person. And in that one, the defense attorney was asking for strange things, like, I forget what, but Chutkan turned it down, but she was very by the book. She's very much like, this is how my trials are going to proceed. This is what the DC District Court says in their basic guidelines of, I forget the word they use. There's like a blue book or something, guidelines that the DC District Court follows. So it was basically agreed upon by the more senior judges, and people and the judges generally follow those guidelines. And so she's very much by the book. I thought she was very fair. I had a good impression of her. She is going to have Trump in front of her on August 28th. Like I was saying, that's going to be the first pretrial hearing, and she is already requesting both sides, prosecution and defense, to submit their timelines for the trial so she can get a ballpark idea for her calendar, for the court's overall calendar, I guess, of how long this trial will take. And on August 28th, she will set the date for the trial. Now, a lot of people I saw on the media, CBS, CNN, NBC this evening, a lot of people were theorizing that it will not be next year, that this trial, they will try and get into this year. Now, other people say that it just will take a while to go to trial, and that Trump's attorneys will try and push it back. But Judge Chutkan, like I said, she's very by the book, and she also believes in pretty speedy trials. And the ideal within our judicial system is a fair and speedy trial, to not delay things, to not delay justice. So yeah, it could very well happen. Before, well, I don't know. They're not saying this year. They're saying before the election, which would be November of next year. No, they're saying, I think a lot of the talking heads in the media were saying it's going to be before the election, probably several months before the election, but it will be in 2024. So I can see that. Yes, it's not going to happen this year, this calendar year, but it's going to happen. I think a lot of them are saying within a year. So it'd be on or before August 2024. So before the election, a few months before the election, likely. Some people are saying, nah, it takes a while. It might be after the election. Honestly, if I had to guess right now, I'd say, yeah, it might be June, July, or August of 2024. So a few months before the election. And Alvin Bragg, in the New York indictment, that has to do with a lot of the hush money payments to porn star Stormy Daniels. He has already indicated that he's willing to let this trial go before his, that they're tentatively set for March 2024, but he's willing to step aside and let the DC one go in March or April, and he would delay his a few months. But so it maybe the New York one would then switch places with Jack Smith's, and Alvin Bragg is indicating he would do that. And so the New York one would be moved to like May or June, I guess. I'm not as sure about the Florida one because that's a federal indictment as well. And I'm not sure if they'd be willing to move it as well. But still, by Alvin Bragg opening up that willingness to move it, that I guess seems to move it up a couple months sooner. I think that over the next year, it's going to continue to be a very tense time in this country. It's been that way for a while now. Very polarized. The hardcore supporters of Trump will continue being hardcore supporters of Trump. And I do think after a few months from now, you'll start to see more Republicans begin to peel away from him, and the party will become more divided going into next year. That's my prediction. I doubt anybody can make up the 30-point difference between Trump and his nearest competitor right now, which is Ron DeSantis. But if it's not DeSantis, there might be somebody else that breaks out and gets closer to Trump. But I think Trump will still be the Republican nominee in the end. And so we will continue to have a divided country well into next year.